Welcome to the Tantra and Yoga podcast. These podcasts are recorded live at Anutara Ashram with Artemis and Bhairav in the Nishka Nation of northern BC, Canada. They bring clarity to some of the fundamental questions by spiritual seekers along the path of awakening.
When I was in a psych course, and when they started talking about stuff like the subconscious, the unconscious, and then we talk about the consciousness, and I just wonder if you could distinguish all these consciousnesses and maybe the ones they're talking about in psychology.
Yeah, I think for myself, I'd like to start, in science, they have these, I think it's like 5 big questions. They have these questions that they call the big questions. And they're questions that they consider uncrackable or haven't cracked yet. It's maybe a way a scientist would rather put it. And one of those questions is, how does consciousness come out of the mind? And this is falling into the realm of psychology. And it's something that even neurobiology is trying to figure out. How can something that's material create consciousness? And they particularly, some are very interested in solving this so that we can learn to put consciousness in AI. But I went to a wonderful lecture on this actually at the Science and Non-Duality Conference. And the man was speaking about how the reason that this is uncracked, is an unsolved problem, is because they're looking at it wrong. The mind doesn't create consciousness. Consciousness creates the mind. And when you change that paradigm, consciousness comes first. The first thing that it's in the womb is consciousness. The first thing that was there before the Big Bang is consciousness. Then this makes a lot more sense. And so from consciousness, we then start to perceive form, a separateness, material world, and so on like this. And consciousness is not only what was there first, but consciousness is then the source of all things. So from consciousness comes also the subconscious. This is how some beings are able to have telepathy, because there is a consciousness there. It's not that there is a separate consciousness between the two of us or between all of us. There's a consciousness underlying it all. My teacher Rupert Spira explains this in a wonderful way. He says, if you fall asleep at night and you have a dream that you're at a dinner party and all of your friends are looking at a fruit bowl on the table, everybody's going to explain the fruit bowl from a different perspective. Someone sees a lot of grapes, someone sees a lot of bananas, over here there's mangoes, and everyone has this different perspective. And when you wake up from the dream, you realize I was the one in each of those bodies. They were all manifestations of my mind. And so in the same way, that's what's happening here right now. We're each having a different perspective of this voice, this body, but ultimately there's a consciousness we share that's underneath it all, if that makes sense. And then that comes through and is filtered through each of us individually. So that is the difference in when we're referring to consciousness versus what psychology is referring to in consciousness. And also, we're using the same word, and in some ways we're using it to refer to the same thing. It's just in psychology and science they're perceiving it as something that comes out of the brain rather than the brain comes out of it. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit? I didn't quite get into subconscious and these kinds of things.
Yeah, there's a few standpoints on what these things mean, but generally when we speak about consciousness, we speak about it in this way that Artemis has explained. But also we can see the subconscious as things kind of lying under the surface, whereas the unconscious is that which is like far below the surface, kind of things that force us into acting certain things out in our conscious everyday life, but we're not aware of them, like unconscious underlying motives and things like this from the past. But that perspective is more within the realm of duality, is more within the realm of limitation. So it's much nicer to talk in non-dual terms, because then we get the broader perspective, you know. In our everyday personal life, yeah, there's going to be unconsciousness there. There's going to be, but you know, reasons why we might not like carrots or might not like apples or whatever, you know. And these are things which are unconscious or subconscious. Take your pick, depending on where they are. But then at a broader level, this consciousness is the unconscious and is the subconscious and is underlying all phenomenon, and is one. There's only one consciousness.
If you found this podcast helpful, be sure to follow and turn on notifications to be the first to know when new episodes are released. To embody philosophy through practice, join our Sangha membership to access a wide range of Tantra and Yoga classes and community. Hari Om.